J-Spot Jack Cheese, Cat Pack Comics, Thor, The Dark World. I actually really enjoyed this movie when it came out. I don't remember quite what the general consensus was, but at least now I think this is kind of looked at one of the like everybody's like, oh, Thor 1 and 2, oh, like they're kind of like jokes as far as MCU goes, and I still liked it. I didn't love it, but I didn't really expect to. Didn't like it as much as I had remembered liking it, but I can see why I liked it, especially compared to the first Thor. It is definitely leagues better than that, I would say. It's just still not like a great MCU movie. It just, I guess mostly it just kind of feels unnecessary, especially when you consider that, and I may have mentioned this in the last Thor review, but when you consider that all of his human companions, Natalie Portman, Stellan Skarsgård, and Kat Dennings, are just kind of West Winged out of the MCU after this movie, which is really shitty. They just kind of pretend that they don't exist after this. I want to say that maybe she's name dropped in Ultron, so that bugs me. But also the fact that like the big cliffhanger with Loki. Whoa, shit! What's gonna happen next? And then like all that happens is at the beginning of Ragnarok. Thor's just like, hey, I know it's you, Loki. Stop doing that. And then he's like, oh, okay, shit. And, like, nothing really comes of it, more or less. So the movie is kind of inconsequential. Sure, they get an Infinity Stone, but, like, they haven't had every Infinity Stone be, like, the central focus of a movie. So they could have just not had, like, the movie as a whole is pretty not needed. So that kind of bugs me, like, thinking back now. Maybe that was partly why I liked it so much, because of not knowing that stuff. You know, that cliffhanger is pretty big if you don't know what's coming. So there's that. But why I did like it, and what I still think is cool, the art direction and the production design of Asgard is really cool. It's a really cool, really well done. And it's great that they show it a lot more than in the first one, for example. I like that the Sif and the Warriors 3 get a lot more screen time. They get a lot more like action in this. The opening fight is fine. It's whatever. But I really like, they're jailbreaking Loki out of Asgard, and everybody plays their part and stuff. That's all really cool. Even if you don't necessarily really see them fighting, it's just cool that it's like, yeah, the whole team's coming together. That whole sequence is really cool. Loki and Thor teaming up, of course, is awesome. I'll take that anytime I can. I'm a sucker for Tom Hiddleston's Loki, and I've come to like Chris Hemsworth a lot more than when he started out. So I like him too. And you can see that the bridge of the gap between Thor 1 and like especially Thor Ragnarok, like jokey, serious versus jokey Thor. Like there's a few like little like quips that he makes, but then he's also like, I'm really serious. Also, his Thor voice sounds really funny sometimes. For instance, I love the part where they're trying to take the alien ship out of Asgard, and they're bickering like little like brothers, like little kids. He's like, I am hitting every button. It's just funny to see him like lose it for a second like that. Because they're brothers. That made me really feel like, oh, that's like familial. The bitching at each other. There's some of the humor lands, but just some of it. There's also some that just feels like really generic summer movie humor. Back to the production design though. There's a lot of potential with the Thor. I mean, it's technically part of all the other ones too, but the different realms and all that. And when you see them all like converging at the end, you kind of get little peaks of them. And I really like the world that it's in, and I like the production design of Asgard. But there's just something about both of these movies. Ragnarok, of course, does it better. There's just something about Thor 1 and 2 that just kind of falls flat. This is a lot better. You get to see a lot more of that than 1. And Thor 1, you kind of give a little bit of leeway because it's like the first one. It's kind of introducing. It doesn't want to go full out crazy cosmic whatever. And it's not even that, like, I didn't want them to, like, gratuitously insert, like, every realm. And I'm not saying that necessarily. It's just what they do show. It's, like, you get the establishing shot of Asgard, and then that's it. And you get the palace. And shit. Like, you get very small locations. You never see people, like, walking on the street, really. You see them walking through the palace. You don't really get a sense of what Asgard is other than the throne, Heimdall's, the Bifrost, and, like, the prison, I guess. It's not a very well established world, but what you do see is really well done, and that's frustrating. There's so much potential with Asgard, with all the other worlds, and Svartalfheim, I think, is where the Dark Elves are. I might not be saying that right, but whatever. That's just like some canyon or some like valley, and that's all you see. It's so bland. You could say that it's Jotunheim, and I would believe you almost. Like, it's just, it's not snowing. They're too similar, and that's kind of disappointing. But at least you go there. And they do go back to Jotunheim when they bring the monster through and stuff. That's kind of cool to do that. So it's like a love-hate thing with, there's all this cool potential. There's the concept of it's really cool. I'm a big fan of, like, space exploration, like discovering other worlds and stuff like that. So I like that. It's just a lot of it falls flat. And this guy, Alan Taylor, who I checked, and he's mostly a TV director, and he's directed some of my episodes from some of my favorite shows. He's done 6 Feet Under, The West Wing, Game of Thrones, Mad Men, I think, was on there. All amazing, great shows. But that's how this movie feels. It feels like it's directed by, like, I feel like he's a TV director, and he's one of those guys that they call in to be like, okay, we need an episode of TV. Shoot a TV episode. And he's a good guy to call on to be like, hey, we know you know how to direct, and you're not going to do anything crazy, you just kind of do everything by the books, and that's what we want for this. And that's exactly what Thor the Dark World feels like as a whole. It feels like they had a season run, phase 2, and they were like, oh shit, well, we got this plan to do these movies set like that, we got to do a movie here and a movie here every year, so we kind of need right? So we kind of need a movie that falls in here, and, might as well do another Thor movie. We don't want to launch a new franchise quite yet, so let's just do another Thor movie. So let's call Alan Taylor in, because we know he's just going to do exactly what we want, and he's just going to he's going to produce a Marvel movie, and that's what we want, and that's what it feels like. There's no directorial flair or style or panache. It's very bland, technically, as far as, like, shot-wise. I can't really remember any particular shot that sticks out. And it's not the only one. There's other Marvel movies that I feel are like this, like, for instance, the first Thor, and the first Captain America, and Ant-Man. I can really feel that. So, while I like the team-up aspect, I like other elements of it. Oh, I also enjoyed that when it was on Earth, it was in England. It was in London, which is also a very heavily filmed location. But hey, it wasn't in America. You didn't see America once. I don't think. I really like when they go to that, like, abandoned building, wherever that is, and like they first discover the anomalies, and there's like this stuff floating around and the portals and all that. It was really reminiscent of one of the segments of the Animatrix. That's what I always think of when I see that. And they do kind of, what they do with it, like, especially in the final fight, I think that stuff's really cool, where they're, like, falling through, and they go to the other realms, and they bring the cars back through, they bring the monster through, and that stuff's, it kind of pays off in the end fight. Speaking of the bad guy, that's another, like, this is a major, just like how it's like bland Marvel movie, bland Marvel villain. This is maybe the blandest, and it bums me out because, again, they're dark elves. Like, it's introducing a race. It's like, holy this is starting to feel like a fantasy film. This is starting to feel like how it should. Where the opening fight seems like it could be straight out of Lord of the Rings, which my wife said. It's like exactly like the opening of Lord of the Rings with like Isildur and it's Sauron. I couldn't think of his name. They finally cuts off his finger. It was just like that sequence. Oh man, if there was a third one, they could have had Cate Blanchett narrating that too for some weird reason. But you know, she was in it. She was in Lord of the Rings. And that kind of it bums me out because it's Christopher Eccleston, who's most known for Doctor Who. I think that's probably what he's most known for. But you know, he's I like him, and he's also plays maybe my favorite character in one of my favorite shows, Matt Jameson in The Leftovers. He totally like gets into the role. I feel like if the character had been more interesting, he would be entertaining in the way that, you know, even the bland, like, Mickey Rourke, like, that's a bland character, but he, you know, brings his own thing to it. Or the Red Skull, bland villain, but Hugo Weaving brings his presence to it, so it kind of makes it entertaining. And I feel like if he had been given more or something, it just felt so generic. Rowan, why do you gotta get there? And I think that that's it. Thor: The Dark World is good. And there's the list. I think it's probably too big for me to just do my point still. It's gonna start cramping me. Actually, this is the halfway point. I just realized that. This is the halfway mark. Neat. Wow, it doesn't feel like that at all. That's so weird. Next week is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Oh, yes. I've been waiting for this one. Got any projects you're working on? You're working on moving the trash can so you can go out to the cat's bathroom and eat shit out of the litter boxes? Do you want to go downstairs?